Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll move straight ahead to our first speaker, with Jim Coleman. Jim and I have known each other for too many years to mention. Um, Jim's going to talk...
We're still friends.
And we're still friends. Jim's going to talk about the very early days at UNSW.
Thank you very much, Sue. Well, it's a pretty nostalgic little kick for me tonight because in 1958, I think I walked out of the campus gates as one of the first architecture graduates from this university. So I'm going to take you back to that era very quickly. It's an alma mater. I've got 2 degrees from this university, so it's quite close to my heart. When I was a student, it was the time of drawing boards and T-squares and slide rules and butter paper and drawing pins and rubbers, lots of rubbers, and corduroy trousers, of course, were de rigueur, and suede shoes, suede boots, and even some smocks, which you'll see in a moment. There's our class, or some members of our class, up on the top of the old main building. And you can see it in the studio there, where the guy in blue finished up with a successful career in New Caledonia. He now lives in France, and he spent a time as a senator in the French government. The bloke in the red was a new Australian from Hungary. So we had a mixed bag, but it was a very small class, 10 or 12 students compared to today. And so, by the way, Ted Mack, ex-mayor of North Sydney, was he was a year behind us. And 2 or 3 other years behind us were Glenn Murcutt, Keith Cottier, John Roseth, Bob Meyer, and several others. So they were the classes that were moving through in the late 50s. There was a diploma class as well, which was being phased out. And Colin Griffiths was one of those people, Jeff Stinson, Jim Tanner, a few other names like that. So where did they all go? Most of them went overseas. I went overseas. It was our first intention after graduation to get out of Sydney and find out what was happening. So we hopped on big ships and we travelled for 6 or 7 weeks to some other place, and some of us didn't come back for years and years. In my case, it was 7 years before I came home. So the faculty at the time: Professor Tony Toundrow from Britain, Eric Daniels was our design lecturer, Derek Wrigley is still going in Canberra, Miles Dunphy, the great bushwalker and mapper, and he was an architect, the father of Milo Dunphy. His lectures were a sellout because we learnt more about the bush than we did about the pyramids or the Gothic cathedrals of Renaissance Italy. But he was a sellout there. And it was this time that we first moved out from Ultimo to the top floor of the old main building, which was still under construction. The faculty started in the old Tech College buildings in Ultimo. So the university and architecture was the first to move out. There was a race course here prior to the university being built. And as far as I can remember from the roof of that building, we looked out onto a campus. These 2 shots here, the first of the campus planning team. The leader was Dirk Dijk, a Dutch architect, and Hans Morelli went on to become an associate of a leading firm, Edwards, Madigan, Torzillo, myself, and Ross Smith, who was a draftsman. Notice the ties and the very careful dress. And our boss was Cobden Parkes, recently retired government architect. It was a sinecure for him, but he used to drift in and out of the office, and occasionally he'd grab a pencil. But the real work was done by this team, and we tried hard to get a handle on what this campus was all about. These are the models we made at the time. Here's the roundhouse. It was the lower campus. There was nothing up on the top. It was a big hill, and we tried to get some order into this remnant race course and the derelict buildings that, by the way, the old Tote, which was started out here, the Vice-Chancellor of the day, Professor Philip Baxter, his private interests were theatre. and he directed the early productions of the student drama club out here. And I think it was his initiation, his interest in the theatre, which caused the Old Tote to start, and eventually we got NIDA. So there's the campus as we made this model, and we tried to get it developed into more of a master plan. And after that, I'm not sure what happened, because we all left. And here's the looking from the west. And this image here, sorry, that image there is the work that my little group of the three of us worked on, our final year architecture studio. So that's the kind of thing that students were producing in those days. After Parkes, Cobden Parkes, we all went our own directions. I went downtown and worked briefly with Neville Grusman, and went overseas, and so that was brought me to the end of my connection with the campus. But I must say that the delight of being a student at that time, it was, I suppose at the time we didn't really think, but a small class, 10 or 12 students, now there are over 100 or more. We were working through a new university, new faculty. Somewhere over the hill to the west was the Ivy League of Sydney University, and Professor Ingham Ashworth, another Pommy, by the way. There was an army of English academics that just kind of captured the academic world in Australia during that era. But so I'll wrap up on that, and with that dream of the what is now the site of the North Sydney Council for that final year project. Thanks very much, Sue.